Welcome to tonight's workshop, the safety pin cycle. And this is one of my most favorite workshops. It is a core chiropractic topic. And this is where we really dive into understanding your care and the lens in which chiropractic views the care we deliver. And when we talk about subluxation and correcting subluxation, how that plays out in terms of your body. We are very much a culture in our country that is focused on symptom relief and how we feel as a way of assessing our health and our body. We are, our healthcare system is an allopathic model, which means allopathy is the study of disease. And when you are in an allopathic model, you are being assessed for disease or pathology and what is the appropriate treatment based on your disease. Chiropractic falls under a very different lens, and it's based on the simple concept of the safety pin cycle, how the body and the brain communicate on a 24/7 basis to allow you to experience life. Okay. And I've got I'm just going to read this to you. I'm reading this book on how to support raising little girls, because I have a little girl. And where they start is understanding brain development. And I just want you to understand how important the brain is and what it does. So there's 2 paragraphs here, so just bear with me. So it says, Dr. Feldman Barrett, who is the author of How Emotions Are Made, explores the concept of the body budget. Essentially, your brain has to predict your body's movements, sometimes even before you are consciously aware of the need to move. Neuroscientists and psychologists call this phenomenon the illusion of free will. It seems that when we decide to do something, before we do it, our brains have already issued predictions to move our bodies, even before we become aware of it. Those brains of ours are very clever things. So in order to make predictions to keep you safe, your brain is not only constantly scanning the environment, it is spending every second of the day and night monitoring how much energy you are using. Pretend that your body has a bank account for its energy. When we eat good quality food and we sleep well and we keep active, our energy bank account will be quite full. There are many things that drain your perceivable physical energy. However, your body needs to also maintain enough energy in its account to keep your immune system working, your blood flowing, your lungs working, and to digest your food. Essentially, your brain is constantly trying to predict how much energy it has in your energy bank. And I bring this up because 10% of what we experience in the world is what we feel, the pressure and sensation around our bodies, the poetic thought, the language, the music. I mean, that is 10% of a portion of our brain. 90% of what's going on, we don't even feel. We don't even know what's happening, because that is our brain working to maintain the energy reserves to keep a heart pumping, blood flow moving to all parts and pieces of the body.
When is it done?
Constant respiration that needs to take place. Let me just,
Here.
There we go. So that we can live life, right? And so that constant communication is simply described through the safety pin cycle. So the safety pin, understanding the brain and how it communicates to our body, the brain-body connection. So first we have the safety pin. And I want you to think about the safety pin as the top portion is your brain, okay? So here's your brain up here. Okay? And there's constant communication taking place between your brain and body. So think about this as just a communication highway that's happening. So the brain talks to the body through your spinal cord and nerve system. So here's your body. I'll call that B O, your body. I'll put your BR up here. So constant communication between your brain and body. So you've got this communication pathway. So from the brain to your body is an afferent pathway. And from your body to your brain is I may have this. Efferent is a body response from the brain. So, and from the body to the brain is this efferent. Sorry. Afferent is sensation coming in. So I have that mixed up. So afferent, not that it matters to you guys, but afferent is sensation coming to the brain. So the brain receiving all input from the body. The brain interprets that, processes that, and the response out is efferent. It is the motor. And when I read those paragraphs, it is the brain predicting what's going to happen, and to conserve energy, it is already responding before we have conscious awareness. Okay, so we eat our food, right? Our food transfers down to the stomach. Our afferent, pathway is giving us information on, okay, now the body's, you've got food running down the esophagus. Our brain's saying, well, squeeze that esophagus down, get into the stomach, right? Okay, it's in the stomach. It's in the stomach. What do we do now? Oh, let's secrete some, stomach acid to break down that food and start going through the process of digestion. So there is every healthcare modality. Anybody who works with the body understands that there is this constant afferent, efferent loop between the brain and the body. Okay, there is no argument here. This is anatomy. This is physiology. This is neurology. This is how your body works. Okay, so nobody would ever argue with you in terms of how the body works. This constant brain-body connection between afferent and efferent sensory input. Okay. Now, chiropractors, how we look at the body is if there is something called subluxation, okay, those malalignments in the spine that place terrible stress upon the nerve system. And what do we already identify the nerve system is? That communication pathway between the brain and the body. Okay, that's this highway system. This is your spinal cord and this is your peripheral nerves. Okay. So if you have subluxation happening in your spine, that means there is a disconnect right here. The safety pin is open. Your brain can't totally talk to your body in a really clear, efficient way. It slows the messaging down. It disconnects that message. Okay. Chiropractors are looking for that within the spine. Is there a subluxation? Is there a malalignment? Is there a subluxation that is not moving in a healthy way? Is it stuck or is it moving abnormally, or both, that is causing poor information in that your brain has to interpret to understand and give a proper response? Okay, so when we go to adjust your spine and correct your subluxations, okay, we are literally taking that safety pin and connecting it to make sure there's clear communication between the brain and the body that is happening. And so that's one of the things that people experience when they start getting adjusted is they notice, man, I'm sleeping better. That's because the energy reserve changes. Your brain has a better predictability of the world, can better conserve energy to support all the things that it is doing. And so you can actually rest at night. Okay, that's why there's research showing that when we adjust up here at C1, that it actually changes blood pressure. And we see blood pressure move into a more normal range with specific techniques. Okay, that's why people experience changes with their digestion, or they experience changes with how they perceive the world, and they get less anxious in situations because their brain is receiving better information to process the world. It is because they are better connected to the body, and the body is better connected to the brain. Okay, so when we correct subluxation, we are reconnecting you to your body and brain. So sometimes especially when people start getting chiropractic care, they'll notice, man, I didn't feel it before, but I feel it now. I'm feeling pain in this low back or this hip where I didn't have that before. Guess what? You're better connected to your body, so you're experiencing more of what's going on in your body versus this disconnect on that right side. That will dull or numb sensations. So we reconnect that loop. Now, guess what? Your brain is receiving a lot more input to understand what's happening with the body. It's a healthy thing, but it's not a comfortable thing. Does that make sense? Yes. And so if we understand this feedback loop, I just want to go here to this chart. This is a nerve chart. You guys have all seen it. They're hanging up in our office. You received one. We have more. If you're like, I lost mine, I'd like one to reference. We have those. But I just want you to understand that you've got the brain up here on that upper left, and you see that spinal cord. Where you're not seeing is all those peripheral nerves that are coming out of the spinal cord. But again, think about this as that highway system of communication to organize all sensory input to help you better process and experience your world. Now, based on where those peripheral nerves are exiting, so I have the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord. The extension of that central nervous system is anything that exits off the spinal cord is called your peripheral nerves, okay? So this is showing you the peripheral nerves that are exiting off of each of these segments from C1 all the way down to T9 is what you can see on my screen. That first column is the primary and secondary functions. That is what they do, okay? The tissues, organs, glands. So all of the tissues, organs, glands within the body that carry out those functions. That is the first column, okay? Now, if you have subluxation, interference, if you have a disconnect on your safety pin, this second column is all the effects or symptoms that somebody could experience. Because there is a disconnect in some way where the brain and body are not totally communicating. That is, a brain has to tell you something. Brain's got to say, hey, something's going on. You got to change what you're doing, or else we're going to be experiencing more significant issues down the road. And let me back up for a second. Remember I told you we experience 10% of what's going on in our body? It takes 60% interference to these peripheral nerves before we feel anything. 60%, which is the weight of a nickel. It's not a lot. So it takes 60% of this system for our brain to start registering symptoms for us to experience something going on within our body. And that can take a long time, right? And so if we look at this top chart, the nerves that are going from C1 to C3, okay, I'm going to get my my annotation here. So I'm looking here, okay? Let's just look at effects. Let's look at somebody who maybe has headaches and migraines, okay? Let's say somebody has headaches and migraines and they've gotten to a point where they can't live with that anymore and they want to go see a healthcare provider, okay? So let's say they go to their traditional healthcare provider, because that's where most people go. And our way of addressing this concern in our healthcare model is to identify what type of headache or migraine they're experiencing and give them the appropriate treatment, which is oftentimes a medication. So if we go back to understanding the brain-body connection, and we are just doing a medication to alter or address the symptom, how are we changing this brain-body connection? Or are we giving the body more to deal with by introduce a chemical component to stress to the body, are we potentially doing harm here? By taking away the headache or migraine, not addressing this safety pin cycle, not addressing why that migraine or headache is there in the first place, but just addressing the symptoms. So, and sometimes the symptoms are so bad that we do need gaps of time to help us get through as we sort that brain-body connection. But you're going to want to make sure that you're going to a provider who honors that brain-body connection and gives you appropriate health care and support to heal this brain-body connection. So chiropractors, they do not treat anything. We don't treat low back pain. We're not going to treat your headaches. What does treatment mean? It means to treat a symptom. But what did I just tell you? We're looking solely at the brain-body connection. We want to reconnect that safety pin cycle. We are correcting subluxation. How the brain and body respond and heal from that, we could never take credit for. Your body is so amazing. Within you, you have everything you could ever need. We just want to support your highest expression of health through that brain-body connection. We want to correct subluxation. We don't want to treat your low back pain. We don't want to treat your headache. That is just a symptom amidst an entire ecosystem in terms of how you're expressing health. Right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, have you ever heard somebody who says, well, I don't believe in chiropractic?
Yeah, all the time.
Those chiropractors, they're witches, they're black magic, that's fake, right? And what I'm telling you is we are as scientific as they get in terms of understanding how the body works and where we go to introduce correction and help restore function. So when people say those things, they're living out of a different paradigm because they're living in an allopathic model that is looking for pathology or looking for disease and the treatment of disease. And I just told you, we don't treat disease. We work with this brain-body connection to support a higher expression of health. So when people are living in that paradigm and saying, well, we don't believe in chiropractic, they don't understand how we practice and the paradigm we live in. Because the paradigm we live in is called salutogenesis, which means the birth of health. So we are looking at somebody as, what is keeping this person from expressing their highest potential? What is keeping this person from being healthy and well and vitalistic, right? A very different paradigm. So if you're operating out of pathology and disease and treatment, you're not going to get us. And it takes a lot of time to shift your paradigm into a different lens, because we are bombarded with pharmaceutical commercials from, the moment we turn on our TV and treat this and treat this and treat this, and you have this, well, go see your doctor because they can treat this, this. And you're not healthy unless you feel good, so you need to take XYZ.
And these could possibly be the side effects.
And where they have potentially side effects or massive side effects in some cases, right? But I don't think anyone has, a deficiency in Tylenol. I don't think anyone has a deficiency in ibuprofen, right? I don't think we're deficient. We're deficient in other ways. And so, let me go back here. Let me clear this. And let me go back to my safety pin cycle. So safety pin, that is what chiropractors are working with, your brain and your body, clearing this connection. It's almost too simple. And we look at how can you have that disconnect What causes subluxation? And the easy umbrella, I guess the easy label for that umbrella is stress. And if stress becomes so much that our body can no longer, and our brain can no longer adapt, right? It's like you're trying to drink from a hose that's just turned on high, right? The stress is so much that your body can no longer adapt. It's disconnected in a way that it's processing and not being able to organize all the information, that it starts to break down and show you symptoms to say, you got to change. You need to do something differently. And so we look at what can cause this disconnect is a physical component, 10, 12 hours a day in a unhealthy posture, or a motor vehicle accident or a fall, right? Any physical component you could think of that is stressing the body. And we see those effects with an x-ray, right? So if you've seen your x-rays and you have any degenerative change showing up, that oftentimes is due to physical stresses over time. There can be an emotional stress, and this is a big one. You've got trauma. And if you read The Myth of Normal by, which I'm reading now, and it's fascinating. Can't remember his name. It's Canadian. He talks about trauma being the big T trauma, the things that all make sense in terms of what we might experience. That's the physical, mental abuse from a family member or a close friend, right? So the big T trauma, what's harder to address is the small T trauma, the things that happen day in and day out that our, brain perceives to be unsafe, and we get disconnected and unattached to those people who we need the most connection from, at a very early age. That's why they say the first 1,000 days are critical, because of what our attachments should look like and what creates safety and connection. And that really changes the lens and perspective that we live life with forever, right? So the small T trauma. Won't get into a lot of details there, but so you've got the mental emotional stress, you got the physical stress, and then you've got the chemical stress. So the foods that we eat or what we're exposed to day in and day out in terms of allergies or environmental stresses with dust, pollen. You've got electromagnetic fields. So you've got all of these stressors that we are continually bombarded with that will slowly chip away at how the brain and body are able to adapt to that. So when we look at supporting that brain-body connection, it actually supports a better resiliency. People start thinking differently and start to make different decisions that slowly reduces the stress component, right? So here's that. If you wanted to know what afferent and efferent looks like, this is that afferent-efferent loop. You've got continual response of sensory input, afferent information, and efferent, a response from that. So to arrive at health, first we need connection, right? We want to have that brain-body connection. Next, we want healthy communication, healthy organization. Sensory input comes in, brain's able to process and communicate appropriately throughout the body for coordination to take place. That is health. When you have that disconnect, when you have subluxation that's interfering with health, you don't have that connection to begin with, so it's impacting the communication coordination. And we call this, when subluxation is present, we call it dis-ease, not disease. It's a state of dis-ease. There's no ease, or comfort, or experience in terms of how we feel in our body or how we're thinking in our mind. This is the pre-state to disease, to pathology, right? I think that's all I got on the slides here. So I guess I want to share my screen. I want to go back to my nerve chart. So this is where I want to end, because it is so vital that you understand this brain-body connection and how you support your health and well-being. From a very early age, they say the first 1,000 days are critical from conception. You know, I had a friend tell me, do you commit to spending the money for early childhood education, or do you commit to spending the money for college? Because they're about the same amounts of money, you know. And she said the consensus from her research was you look at really supporting that early childhood education, because the brain is a sponge and it is taking everything in, and it is where it's laying the foundation for what's happening for the rest of your life. And if you get to be 20, 30, 40, 50, and you decide, I really want to address my childhood and the level of trauma I experienced, whether it was from family dynamics or otherwise, it takes a lot of work. And there was a lot of heartache, you know, between that time frame and the beginning of life. And so that's where at Monarch Family Chiropractic, we think it is vital that the best time to get checked is now. If not, the best time to get checked is, you know, as close to the start of life as possible. Because if you have a good, healthy brain-body connection at the start of life, you have a brain that's able to process good sensory input, organize information. That means that brain is forming healthy attachments and connections to create the architecture for the lens in which you perceive the world, whether it's safe or threatening, and the responses, your responses that you would have based on your experience of the world. Mm-hmm. And if somebody at the very start of life experiences a world that is threatening, they tend to be more hypervigilant, they tend to be more closed off, they tend to experience more disease in life, less intimate connections, right? So we believe that the best time to get checked is now. And if there's anybody who is, you know, in your world who is a kiddo, get them checked. We just finished a patient appreciation week last week. Thank you for referring in your family and friends, then your loved ones. And just because it's, you know, it's past patient appreciation week doesn't mean that we aren't trying to create a more health conscious, more health minded community, not just now, but what they're looking like 30 years from now. So my ask of you is, who do you know that you can help support with better information of understanding the brain-body connection and why we want to start seeing, you know, people as close to the start of life as possible. Not to say, you know, we have plenty of people who are coming in much later on in life, much more mature, and like a fine wine, right? Mm-hmm. Much more mature than babies. And yet you are still experiencing some really wonderful experiences when you start getting reconnected, right? And that's all it is, a better brain-body connection for your brain to do what it's meant to do. When you look at chiropractic, it's really amazing. We're not adding anything. We're not giving you anything. We're reconnecting your brain and your body so that it can do what it's meant to do, which is the most wonderful thing. So thank you for being with me tonight. I appreciate you with this topic of the safety pin cycle. That's why if you look around our office, you'll see big safety pins. So that can be a little scavenger hunt. How many big safety pins do we have? You'll know why they're there. Love and appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of our community and practice. I will happily scroll through this chart. Thank you for being a part of our practice and being a part of our community and family. And thank you for coming alongside us to really grow our community of more health-minded individuals. We appreciate all the things you share, whether it's sharing this workshop or actually bringing somebody in for a spinal workshop or to see your adjustment or having somebody get checked. We really value and appreciate that. So Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week. Yeah.
Yeah, I have.